Next, complete summary at 11. In just a moment, Gene Shepard from the village Limelight.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news. Keeping pace with the flow of traffic is one way to cut your chances of being involved in a Labor Day weekend accident. Adjust your speeds to local conditions. Remember that both speedsters and slowpokes cause accidents. So your New York State Police say, to be safe, keep pace and drive carefully at all times. This is WOR-AM and WOR-FM, your RKO general station in New York.
Now, try your lines again, gang. Try your lines. Let's hear it. Come on. Excelsior. That's right. Work it out carefully now. Oh, boy. And before you belt that fat head out, because this is a method world we're living in, very few people got any scripts. Have you ever had the feeling, by the way, that you're living in a world that is scripted and everybody else knows the cues and you're trying to ad-lib your way through a fantastic mass of cheesecloth and you're pretending, you buy great suits, get yourself a jazzy shirt. All the time you're walking around and you can't tell the cues. That suddenly guys in your neighborhood rise to become David Merrick. How would you like to have lived next to David Merrick when you were a kid and you're still working in the lawnmower plant in Cleveland? Boy, you have to explain a lot in this life to yourself. Yes. All right, gang, all set now? You want to tell Ohio what to do? You want to let them know in Wisconsin what we here in gentle Greenwich Village think of them? Here where life is lived to the fullest, where existence is a sweet cake of Fleischmann's yeast, where you nibble quietly at the edge of the compost heap of existence, growing like a veritable, soft, sensitive geranium amid the rotten, crummy cactus of life. Yes, we are here tonight where beauty grows of its own accord, in Greenwich Village, in the Limelight, just off 14th Street down on 7th Avenue South, where the sound at the proper moment of the symbolic horn is heard that rocks Wisconsin to its very foundation. Oh! Yes, they're whistling along the turnpike tonight. Saturday is being celebrated in its primitive little way everywhere. Guys are hoping that it will work out, knowing full well that if it does, what then? That's always a question, man, isn't it? Yes, what then? Yes, indeed. And then all of a sudden, out of the darkness, comes that cry, Excelsior, you fatheads! Fantastic. Come on, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's let them know it. Hey, hey! All right, hold on, gang. After all, it is Labor Day, and we are about to celebrate a great American ritual. I mean, Labor Day. And here I am surrounded by a sea of obvious laboring people, all ready to celebrate something which means very little to them. The bricklayers are off laying bricks, I can tell you that. They're not celebrating. We are also about to celebrate something else. This week, I received in the mail a notification that starting Monday is American Art Appreciation Week. Now, what are you going to do about it, friends? You're going to walk around and think about the Mona Lisa something on Tuesday, What are you going to do? How are you going to celebrate it? And the object of this is to celebrate American art itself. It says we must celebrate American art and American artists. And I brought here something tonight that illustrates American art at its most dynamic. Now, in case you can't see what this is, This is a polyethylene Smokey the Bear. Now, Smokey in this case has a top that comes off. And being that he's an American bear, he fills up with ketchup. And then you put it back on and you squeeze Smokey, all the while preventing forest fires. Now I submit for those of you who wonder why this is brought in here, that 1,000 years, I don't know whether you know anything about plastic, but it does not get rusty. Plastic is hard to get rid of, I can tell you, Dad. And this thing is likely to last 1,000 years. That if I were to take this out back of the Limelight tonight and bury it, it'd lay there for 1,500 years. And then one day in the far-flung future, an archaeologist would come. He's digging there, you know. He's trying to figure out what kind of men the 20th century men were, you know. He would... He'd carry it under the light. Say, it looks like some kind of an animal, a bear, I believe. Must be a religious object. It's animal fetishism, I believe, yes. It's just the top comes off. I see that. What is that, sir? Would you think they'll have ketchup 1,500 years from now? Oh, no. He'll smell it. It's red. This must be blood. Obviously some sort of a sacrificial thing. It must have been connected with human sacrifice of some kind. Now let's see how this thing... It squirts out. He says, yes, the flowing out of blood. The human sacrifice, the animal worship, and the bear. And slowly but surely they would begin to piece together the story of our time. Well, friends, what do you think we ought to do? Do you think we ought to burn it all before we go? Because we know how it is, you know. And the sad fact of it is, guys are going to walk around, they're going to say, you know, that must have been a fantastic time. Have you ever noticed that no matter what time of history that people talk about, they talk about it as having been a good time? Almost every man here thinks that if he were born during the days of knighthood, he could see himself wearing a halberd, a big helmet. Those guys were great. Well, here we are. 5,000 years from now, they're going to say we were great. And we are. With our Smokey the Bears, our Howard Johnsons. How are we going to explain that? There's a lot of things. And in fact, the education of becoming a person is one of the most subtle of all things. And tonight, somebody on the way in, I was coming in, somebody says, Shepherd, why do you tell Army stories? Well, one of the reasons I tell Army stories is that this is where it's all laid bare. Oh boy, I'll tell you, you have no idea how much you learn about just what man is by reading about and being in and participating in the world of the Army. And I'm going to tell you a story that I don't know whether I should tell this story or not, because there's women and children in the crowd here tonight. But I don't know whether I should tell this story or not, because it's one of the kind of stories that never appears in books by James Jones or Norman Mailer, you know. I mean, you know, the real Army man. You know? It just doesn't appear in that. And I want to tell you a very strange feeling that all Army men, every guy who's ever been in the Army, the Navy, or the Marines, I'm going to tell a story that he's never told his chick. I know this because it's one of those strange, crazy little moments of revelation. Now, you've got to picture how we all live as civilians. You know how you live. There's certain things you do. You know, you wear a coat, you wear a suit, you know, you wear shoes. You walk around, you eat 3 times a day. There's a whole mystique of being in what you call normal life. And you don't recognize it as that. Now, all of a sudden, you're in the induction center. And there I am, I'm with 6,000 guys, and we're suddenly there in a fantastic building, giant building, and we're in what they call This is the place where you're classified. This is where your whole life is decided before you even know it's being decided. Does this happen to you in civilian life? Does somebody come along when you're 3 and take your fingerprints, pull your ear, and take a little shot of your blood and say, from this guy's going to work on a pole line. Go. Well, we're all sitting there, and there's this officer up there, and he says, men, you're in the Army of the United States. We're all sitting there dressed in our regular clothes, short sleeve sports shirts. We're not even dressed in Army clothes yet. He says, you're now in a classification center. And the first thing we're going to do is see whether or not any of you guys have got a good ear for code. You ever hear of code, radio code? I'm beaming, I'm a ham down there. I says, I'm right back in my life, little realizing I was sealing my existence for 1,000 years. The first thing you learn in the Army, you don't know nothing about nothing. You can't type. You hit things like that. They ask you if you type. You say, what type? What do you mean? He says, here, this typewriter. He said, what do? You hit it. You don't know anything. But, of course, when you're first there, because we come out of school, where the whole object in school is to show them how much you know. Immediately there's 1,000 guys waving there. Yeah, I know code, Sergeant. Yeah. 10 minutes later, they're in Sicily, with a chunk of lead behind their ear, that quick. So you don't know this. Well, anyway, I go through this whole scene the first day, and boy, it's really scary. They're giving you tests and code and one thing and another, and nobody really talks to anybody because immediately it works out in life as it does in the Army. There's always 17 guys out of 100 who are the chutzpah artists. These guys know the whole scene already. Already they're up there talking to the officer. They're working. And he smiles. He goes back and sits down. He says, how does he know? This guy came on the bus with me. What does he know? You begin to feel already the whole Army's receding. You're going to be a private for the rest of your life. And you can see sergeant stripes on guys that are sitting there in Bond suits, Well, it's beginning to develop. And that night, we go to the barracks. We're sitting in the barracks for the first night. Now, you got to picture this. This is never shown in any movie. I've never seen this. And there are 75 guys sitting on the bunks on the ground floor, and there's a whole crowd on the top floor, and they're all just sitting. The sergeant says, stay in the barracks until you hear the whistle blow. We're all just sitting there with our ties. It's very embarrassing, somehow a uniform is necessary to take that kind of junk, We're just sitting there, your coat is suddenly very striped. Your jacket is suddenly extremely blue. We're sitting there. And all of a sudden, a guy gets up down at the end. And he walks down to the duty corporal. And he says, where's the John? Well, this is something that had occurred to us, you see. We never put it into words, because at home, somehow there's always, it's, what I mean, it's doors and stuff. So he says, where's the John? I said, what do you mean, the latrine? He hollers out loud, there's none of this whispering back. He says, you mean the latrine? The guy says, yeah. Sort of, all of a sudden he feels like a little kid in 3rd grade, right? Did they have that in your school? You had 2 fingers and 1 finger, So, why did Miss Shields have to know, What was she up to, So you all of a sudden feel this, and he says, it's a latrine. He says, down the end of the company street. I says, oh, thank you, Sergeant. Can I go? I said, yeah, what do you mean? Of course. And the guy goes out, he goes down the street, he's looking around, and we're all waiting. See how it works out, And about 10 minutes later, he comes back with the strangest look on his face you ever saw in your life. He comes back, with this real sheepish look. He sits down, and you can see he's still got to go. He just sits there. He's sitting like this. And one by one, each one of us go down there, and we discover why he came back like that. There ain't nothing in civilian life that even parallels it. Here's what they've got down there at the end of the company street. They've got a building as long as this, see? And lining both walls are these mechanical contrivances. You know the thing that your mother used to... You know that thing, you know what I'm talking... Here it is, you see, all these Johns, okay. They're lining the walls, see, and facing each other. And there ain't no walls. Well, I'm just asking you, can you imagine? You have come out of Hammond, Indiana, you know, or Elyria, Ohio, or someplace, you know, and your idea of being real racy was to write something on the wall in school, you know, and John... you know. Have you ever wanted to catch a guy writing something on the wall? And so this is the whole... And all of a sudden, here is this... you have no idea how basic it is. And, of course, the first thing you do is say, well, I'll tell you what, you know, you start figuring. Man always plots. He never gives in right away. He adapts eventually, but never without a fight. And so you come back to the barracks and you say to yourself, well, I don't really have to go. I'm going into town tonight. I think I'll go to the Bluebird Inn tonight and have a beer. And the sergeant says, no passes tonight, guys. You see, the whole barracks got green, you know, they're all sitting there. Everybody's at the same, and nobody says anything to anybody else about it, you know. There's never any talk, because at this point, nobody even uses the final. Of course, eventually in the Army, there's only one word that's used to describe all situations. You'll have to tell her this on the way home when you get out. But at that point, we don't know that. We just talk like human beings. We say things like, it is raining out, Sergeant. And he goes, bah! He uses the words. Well, I'm telling you, you see this green come over, you see, and everybody is plotting. I'll wait till 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, 3 o'clock dawns, and you see these shadowy figures. Thousands of them coming from all over. Well, I'll tell you, it takes, this lasts for roughly a week. And after that, you'd be surprised how adaptable the human creature is. You have no idea. And after that, this building down at the end of the street is kind of, it's the place, well, it's the only truly sociable place. You know what I mean, man? Yeah, you know. And they sit down there, and the whole war is fought out in there, you know. And somebody way down at the other end will say something. Hey, did you hear what? General Smathers is getting transferred down to the 2nd Army Corps. And then way down at the other end, somebody will say, blah! That one Army word that says, get it out of your skull. They'd never transfer old iron, you know, that's... I almost said what they really called him. And so back and forth it goes. And sitting next to it, now the reason I'm telling you this is because only men, people who have been through this kind of experience, this kind of truly basic, honest experience of the human animal, begin to appreciate some of the subtleties of mankind himself. And so the other day, I'm sitting in the Four Seasons. I'm sitting down there. You know the Four Seasons, any of you? He does. That's why he's eating in the village these days. I'll tell you, man. And I'm sitting there in the Four Seasons, very official-looking place. And there's waiters that have got these sideburns. You know the kind of sideburns that C. Aubrey Smith had in the movies, that look like a British general that come all the way down, you know, and they walk with the stiff, that beautiful carriage of men who are diplomats, who are just, you know, doing a little moonlighting down here at the Four Seasons. And all around me, have you ever been in places where the beautiful people congregate? I'm talking about the people you read about in columns and that. These tall, thin ladies, these bronzed men, The guys that wear sunglasses even when they're asleep, this crowd. And they come in and they're all silk and beautiful, and they know how to order, and they're so familiar. They talk to the waiter in French or Yugoslavian or something. And they all know each other. It's a funny, strange thing of everybody being in, knowing, and it's a kind of world. And the little fountains are sprinkling down there, and you're completely cut off from the rest of the world. Like the cigar butts on 6th Avenue. That's all gone. And you're here. Well, I have been brought there by two people. First time I've been here. I'm sitting, I'm wearing my suit. And I'm being very official, I've got my beard. One thing about a beard, you can either be, believe me, when you wear a beard, you're either considered a rotten beatnik bum or a guy that owns a Mercedes. You're one or the other, you see, and I'm playing my Mercedes side there, Sitting there like this, like I've just climbed the Matterhorn. That kind of thing. I'm looking a little bronze. Spit, once in a while. Oh, yeah, you learn that. You see, a bearded man can get away with a lot of stuff because they think, geez, he's been through hell. There's a guy with a beard, he knows. Oh, yeah, if you play it that way, you see, if you really do, you can sit there, like that. You look like a tank commander or something. I've just come back, and I'm sitting there like this, and they're bringing in the little condiments, they're bringing in the black olives and all this stuff. The guy stands up in front of me, and he takes this big, beautiful silver pitcher. It says 4 Seasons on it. And he starts to pour it in. He's pouring it in, and he's pouring it in and in. He's pouring water in. You see, they've got this tall glass, and it's making this funny noise. And all of a sudden, a familiar feeling hits me. That works, friends. That sure does. And I'm sitting there, and here I'm with these official people, the guy with the ribbon across the chest, and the waiter walks away with the silver thing. And all of a sudden, I am back in Company K. You can't go and ask the ambassador, excuse me, what do you do, And I'm sitting there. And incidentally, these dinners there go on for 27 courses. And then they follow it with brandy. And they keep pouring water all the time. Steadily. Oh, wow, that fantastic torture. I'm telling you. Oh, it's fantastic. After about 20 minutes of this, my eyeballs are bugging. I'm trying to say, just guts will do it. I can control guts. Yes, sir. That's that thing where you say to yourself, I am bigger than this. I am a person with a will. Man can rise above himself. And you don't hear anything. After a while, your ears begin to ring, You're beginning to concentrate on one thing, And they'll say to you, Robert, you say, yeah. Yes, that's very true. And all the while, there's a little voice in you screaming, where is it? Where is it? Well, they don't even have one at the Four Seasons. What you have suspected about those people all the time is true. Oh, it's a very terrible show. I'm glad all the bosses are out of town. They're not hearing it. Well, I'll tell you what I did. It's funny. Man is very adaptable, like I said. I'm sitting there, it's about 25 minutes go by, and I'm sweating. Oh, boy, you're sweating. Your beard is itching, and everything. You'd be surprised how your beard starts to itch at the wrong time. That's terrible. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I said, I gotta go. So I leap up, very quickly, I say, excuse me, I have to make a phone call. I go tearing out into the hall. You should have seen me. I'm down the stairs. I'm out on the street. I don't take any chance. I cut over to Lexington, turn left, and I go into this rotten little bar I know. I come running in there. Hi, Pete. And 2 days later, I see Pete, and he says, listen, 75 guys an hour come through here. He says, it's the overflow from the Four Seasons. So you know what? When you've lived in this kind of reality, literally, you know something about man that the people who have never been able to and have been lucky, they've never escaped it. They can have this kind of cellophane thing around them. Well, the Army is full of things like that. Now, I'm going to tell you another scene that was a wild scene. This is directed to the guy with the beard in the corner there. I've got one, so we can talk together, that happened to me in the Army, and it was totally surrealistic. Now, it's the kind of thing could not happen in civilian life. And because it did happen in the Army, you have a tendency to say, well, that's one of those nutty things. That's the Army, it's just nutty. But no, it's the real way people are. The Army does not put restrictions on people. It takes them off. Literally. Oh, I'm telling you, there's a lot of guys that have got a lot of stuff that they have never told their chicks about what they did in the Army. I'm telling you this. And so, about 4 or 5 weeks after I'm in the Army, I have been shipped to this camp, a barracks. Now, what do you think a barracks is like? Most people have never been in a barracks. I guess they think it's like camp, or like the Catskills or something. A lot of guys sleeping together, so it's just kind of fun. You're all camping. You're having fun there. Well, the barracks is something else again. I'll tell you, man. Here's this building, you see. It's 2 stories. It's a traditional Army barracks. At the end of each floor, there's a butt can. Big can hanging there. It's a can that was used for pineapple juice hanging there. At the end of each one. And all these bunks back and forth. It's our first taste of true barracks life. We've gone through the reception center. We've gone through all these things. Now we're soldiers, you see. We've got suits and stuff. And we're beginning to act like soldiers traditionally have acted. Have you ever read the stories out of the Iliad? Have you ever read stories of the Greek and the Roman soldiers? The first thing they do when they put on a suit and they come into town, oh, man. I'll tell you. A soldier is a different breed of cat. He's the same guy. And so we're all sitting in the barracks one night. It's about 10 minutes past 5. I've never told this story on the air. Because, well, when you hear it, maybe you'll know why. Very strange story. We're all sitting there, see, and this is old Shep, the same guy. This is me, I'm not different. I'm just sitting there, see. I'm looking a scene over. We are now in Class B uniform. This is the most anonymous of uniforms. Class B is the uniform of the wool shirt, the OD shirt, the OD pants, the web belt, and the hat, with the tie tucked in. We have just stood retreat. And the sergeant says, tonight, in 15 minutes, we're going to have a formation. We're going to have a GI party. A GI party. Any of you know what a GI party is? Well, you're going to know now, tonight. He grins. And so we're waiting for the GI party. You see, we're sitting like this. Not one of us knows the guy next to him. That is very important. That's a very good feeling, by the way. Everyone thinks automatically you'd be lonely. No, on the contrary. For the first time, you can do anything. You can say anything. You can be anything. You'd be surprised at how many polo players were here, Guys that were famous stunt pilots down there. All of a sudden, you ask him why he's a PFC, on the signal. He says, well, I don't want to mess around with an officer. So the world is beginning to ferment for us. See, so we're sitting like this, and it's in the shadow of the Ozarks. The hills are reaching up there off to the darkness. And it's one of those companies, every company you're in, we're all reading about the South now. I have never been in a company in the Army that wasn't composed of 75% guys that said, hey, you, come over here, you. You never had any idea how many Southern accents there were. Hey, man, they got cornbread tonight for dumber. Hey, come on, boy, let's go down and get some supper down to PX. We're going to get ourselves, hey, come on with it. We're going to get ourselves some Milky Ways. Go get ourselves some Coke and Milky Ways. Have ourselves a real ball down there. Well, of course, I'm sitting there part of this, and I can speak the dialect, so I'm working the scene. I say, okay, man, I'll be with you. Oh, yeah, I didn't live in the Indiana swamps for nothing, see. So We're sitting there, all of us are sitting there. And down at the end of the barracks, mark you well, is a guy who had ridden in the troop train with us all the way from Fort Sheridan. He was a little round guy. He was older than we were. We were all about 17, 18, 19. This guy was probably 25 or so, something like that, you know. He was one of those indeterminate ages. Little round man, and he parted his hair in the middle. And he had what they used to call in Hessville, Indiana, a cookie duster. You know, a little mustache. And it was one of those snotty little mustaches. You know? And he was the kind of guy who was always making those little niggling comments, you know, little complaints. He'd just say, when are they going to do something about this? You know, that kind of stuff. He's kind of he had the soul of an insurance man, you know this little guy sitting there. And yet, on the other hand, he was very harmless. He never did anything, never argued, always did his stuff. But he was different. He had a mustache. That's the only difference I could see. Here he is, sitting like this. And all the rest of us are like this. I don't know whether chicks know this, but men have a way of sitting that says, I'm here. You know, I'm really here and I'm part of the scene. So we're sitting like this. The whistle blows. Everybody gets up and stands. Out there in that long line in the company street, the sergeant, the duty sergeant, walks back and forth. He's from Nashville. He says, now look, you're here to learn how to be a soldier. This is the toughest outfit in the whole Signal Corps. You guys are combat singlemen. You know what that means? Well, you're going to find out. We're saying, yeah. You know, all of a sudden, yeah, you know, I know, we're afraid. And yet, all the while, there's a certain, you know, that nice, lithe animal quality of a 17 and an 18-year-older who's made the scene, who's got a 41 Ford back home, you know, the chicks, the whole thing. You're not really scared, you know, we're sort of standing there, all right, come on. You know, we've seen enough movies, we know who's going to win this war. Don't give us this jazz. Only the bad guys get killed, you know. So we know we're not bad guys, you know. No problem there. So we're all standing there, and he's walking up and down. He says, now, we are going to have a GI party. In 2 minutes, I want you to be out here in this company street dressed in your fatigues. And we're going to go down to the supply room. We're going to draw mops, buckets, and we are going to clean every inch of that barracks. We are going to win the prize this week at the cleanest barracks. Captain Cherry's going to be in tomorrow morning, and he's going to look at this barracks with a toothbrush. And if you don't get that plaque, you ain't going into the O show next week. Nothing you wanted more than to go into the O show. And the O show had 500 hillbillies, all suffering from hookworm. And they stood outside the camp just saying, bakshish, bakshish. That was Neo Show. I don't know where it is. I wonder if it's still out there, you know. Neo Show, Missouri. But so there we are, you know. So sure enough, we go tearing into the barracks. You know, there's something about man hurling himself into an unpleasant task. Yeah, you got to see it, you know, to really understand it. Boom, we go in and we're all over, and guys are on the floor rubbing stuff and grubbing around. Everybody's sweating. I'm up on the top floor on my knees with 20 other guys, and we're rubbing down the barracks. We got the GI brushes and the GI soap. We're washing down everything. And over at the other end of my line of brush wielders is Sherman, more popularly known as Shermie the Wormie. Shermie, with his little snotty cookie duster, is down on his knees, scrubbing like mad. He can't keep up with us. We're 17 years old, you know. We're going, let's go, you. Come on, you idiot. We're going like this, you know. And he's way back, and his poor little guy is huffing and puffing and sweating. And we finally arrive at the end, and he's about a third of the way down. We turn around, here he's coming, all by himself. And somebody says, come on, Shermie. He said, I'm hurrying. Come on, Shermie, let's go. And we start cleaning the windows. This poor little guy is down on the ground, scrubbing away. 3 or 4 of us are finished now. We sit back like this. You know, that great look of somebody who's done it. You know, he's cleaned his bit. He's through. I ain't responsible. You're sitting there, you see these guys, that's only dangerous, believe me, that spirit, when it persists into adulthood. It's okay when a guy's 17, he's got this snotty leaning on the hood quality. But boy, when you meet a 48-year-old guy like that, you better go the other way. Because that's bad news. Well, we're it's building up. And there's a funny thing building up in the barracks. It's a kind of an agreement. Let's get after Shermie. Guys are saying things. Something like, hey, Shermie, how about a cookie duster? You going to shave it off for inspection, Shermie? Ha ha. GI humor's great, that kind of stuff. Oh, it's really great. Very subtle, see. And Shermie is down there saying, oh, leave me alone, will you guys? Ooh, what a mistake. What a mistake. He says, leave me alone, guys. And somebody says, hey, fellas, Shermie says to leave him alone. And they come up from the ground floor, they're aware, there's something, there's a hooker going on down there. And Shermie is down on the floor. He's still trying to make it, And up comes this duty sergeant. Oh, boy, I'll never forget this. He walks up. You could hear him coming up the stairs. This kind of thing, Comes up, he stands there like this. All of us are standing around, we're done. And Shermie's on the floor. He says, get on a stick, you! Shermie says, don't leave me alone, will you? He looks around and he says, fellas, leave him alone. We have just gotten the okay from the authorities. He says, leave him alone, fellas. Well, just like that, 85 guys go boom on Shermie. And they're all standing around Shermie. Come on, Shermie, do you want me to help you, Shermie? Come on, I'll help you. They grab his arm, and they're pushing the mop, and they're hitting him. Come on, Shermie, get some more soap, will you? Hey, Russ, get some soap, Mac. And Shermie is down there, and suddenly Shermie starts to cry. In the middle of the army. Some guy brings it up. He says, hey, Shermie. Hey, Sergeant, what are we going to do? Shermie's crying. And you hear way off down on the company street, what? We can't believe this, Somebody hollers out the window, hey, Sarge, Shermie's crying. Should we send him to the day room to rest? He says, don't bother him, fellas. That is his way of saying, lay on, Macduff. And Shermie is down there groveling, and suddenly it had to happen. One of the barracks wits starts on the mustache. And apparently all the years that poor little Shermie was an insignificant little guy, 5 feet 4 inches tall and 5 feet 5 inches wide, poor little Shermie's only thing of glory was this magnificent cookie duster, which he had trimmed. Beautiful little thing, there it was, and it was little touches and just hanging out, beautiful, like a little brush. And he was proud of this. And somebody said, hey, Shermie, let me feel your cookie duster. Hey, it tickles, fellas. Hey, Shermie, do the girls ever say anything when you kiss them? How does it feel to kiss a girl wearing a mustache? Hey, fellas, hey, come on over. Let's all line up and kiss Shermie. Well, sure enough, one lout is down in the crowd. He says, come on, Shermie, give me a kiss. I always wanted to kiss a girl with a mustache. And Shermie says, I'm not a girl. Ah. He's crying. Well, it built up. It went like that until finally it had to come. Inevitably, you see, violence is like a cake of yeast. You add a little water. You set it out there in the sun. The sun comes down, and it begins to rise. It rises higher and higher and higher, until finally it reaches that moment when it is full blown. And then somebody pricks it with a little pin, and down it goes. It's completed the cycle. Somebody said, hey, Shermie, How'd you like to have me shave off your mustache? Shermie looked up. His face is white. Just as white as a dishcloth. And he says, you wouldn't do that. Boom! The guys knew what to do. Poor old Shermie has been touched on the sore tooth. And somebody says, come on, Shermie, come on down. Let's go down to the latrine, Shermie. Let's shave off Shermie's mustache. Hey, Sergeant, does the captain like guys with cookie dusters? Silence. That is the most sinister sound. That is the most sinister kind of approval. Silence. That's like calling for the cop. Hey, cop, help me. Are they doing it? Hey, cop. Silence. He's looking the other way. The sergeant is just calmly walking down to the NCO club, and he is saying, his back is stretched out like this, and on the back you can read, Schick. It's there in big letters of neon, you know. And they grab him, just boom, 4,000 guys. They grab him, and they got him by the feet, and he's struggling, screaming and crying. Ah! And down they go, down the company street. And the GIs start pouring out of the other barracks. Thousands of them. They're hollering, hey, what are you doing, fellas? Somebody said, we're shaving a cookie duster off of Shermie. Shermie says it hurts to kiss a girl with a cookie duster. We're helping him out. We want to help Shermie get the girls in the O-show. Let's go. And into the latrine they go. 10 guys hold them down. Somebody whips out the shaving cream. Bloom, bloom. And his eyes, I remember I'm standing back and I'm hollering like this, let's give it to him. And there are those 2 oysters looking up, those blue eyes looking at the ceiling. He's totally paralyzed. He's saying nothing now. And so over him goes Gasser. Okay, Shermie, now you can kiss a girl and she won't say it tickles. And Shermie gets up. Little flecks of shaving cream. Everybody's standing around. Somebody says, well, how does it feel, Shermie, now? You can feel the breeze again, can't you? It doesn't scratch, doesn't itch. Shermie says nothing. Just turns around. Walks out of the latrine. And the entire personnel of Company K stands in there. Watches him go by. So somebody says, got any hot water? Oh, boy, it's going to be a great night in the O-show. Like this. Ah, boy, what a night. Let's go down and get the pass. And we're all lined up getting our passes. Except for Shermie. Shermie is back in the barracks. Somewhere. Trying to grow a mustache. Trying to become 6 feet 9 inches tall. Trying to lose 40 pounds. Trying to become 17-year-old again. Trying to stop being this little round square who's scared of girls and who's scared of automobiles that honk. Scared of dogs. He's down there in his upper bunk way at the end with the covers pulled up. And we all go into the Bamboo Inn. We sit down. There must have been 45 of us in this terrible, rotten clip joint. You know the kind of clip joint where it says 50 girls, continuous show? And there's always a guy standing up. All right, let's go, let's go. The show is just beginning. We are in there, boy. Have you ever wondered who goes into those things? Sailors, soldiers, you know. And so we're sitting in there drinking the rum Collins and the whole scene. And somebody hollers up at the MC, hey, dedicate this next tune to Shermie. And the whole crowd breaks up. Well, this went for about 15 minutes. When in came a lieutenant. Never comes in this place. This is an enlisted man's joint. Are you aware that there are places that EM go and places that officers go, and it's an unwritten law. We have our territory, you have ours. You know, that's it. And in comes this lieutenant, first lieutenant. He walks in, he's looking around. Everybody's sitting there. What's he doing here? You know? EM here, boy. There's a certain rugged pride in being the lowest thing on the face of the earth. There is. You can't go any lower. He can't bust you. You can't do nothing. There you are. You're sitting there. Oh, boy. I think you're just sort of sitting there, and he walks in, walks through. Is you guys from Company K? This is in the middle of a nightclub. A singer is up there on the floor singing. A waiter's walking around with bottles of beer. He says, you guys from Company K? Yeah, what do you want to make of it? You know that attitude? He says, I'll tell you what I want to make of it. How many of you guys know Sherman? Yeah, Shermie the girl. You better get back to your company area, all of you. And he walked out. And you should have felt it coming in from the street. No, there was a funny feeling. What happened? What happened? It just flowed in, and everyone says, what's this guy putting us on? That bravado, putting us on, he ain't going to get me to go back. And everybody's saying, yeah, it's kind of late, It is kind of late, we've been there 8 minutes, It is kind of late. After all, I've had half a beer already. It's kind of late. And so we're all in that little red bus going back to Company K on Tennessee Avenue, the 27th Signal Training Combat Battalion. We're all heading back. And, of course, everybody's talking about everything else but Shermie. We're saying, Lieutenant, blah, 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 blah. We get off of the bus, and there standing at the gate are two majors in the MPs. Have you ever seen a major in the MPs? He's different from the guy with the little white hat, That's a big scene, man. Oh. And they're standing there by the gate. And, of course, there's this little place, where you present your passes. So we're walking. That guy's like, he says, are you guys from Company K? You guys from Company K? Come over here. Come on, line up. Come on, line up over here. I'm from the Provost Marshal. I want to know how many of you guys know Sherman. Every last one of us did. And we want to know what happened. What's the scene? And so somebody down at the end says, we all know him, sir. That's still that little bravado. We all know him, sir. He's in our barracks. Sherman tried to hang himself tonight. And the first sergeant caught him in the barracks. I want to know which one of you was responsible. He won't talk. I just know somebody in this barracks did it. And there we stood. Company K. 17-year-old Sharpies. All of us. Our patches. Our jazzy little hats with the Signal Corps braid, all standing there. Who caused it? He says, listen, I want to find out who caused this, and I want somebody to come down tomorrow morning to the Provost Marshal and give me a full story. Who is going to volunteer? And we stood. Well, 10 minutes later, we are in the barracks. And way down at the end, the double-decker, you can see where they have rolled Shermie's bed up. You know how they roll it up, fella? You know what I mean? It's rolled up. The blankets are gone. There's that GI ticking pillow there. He's just gone out of our lives forever. Somewhere. And I suspect right now, all over this country, there are at least 150 guys out of Company K who on quiet Saturday nights, grown-up men, wearing their Brooks Brothers suits, their jazzy Indian shirts, walking through streets, occasionally see little round pasty faces with cookie dusters. with scared eyes. And they are reminded of something inside of them. Something inside of each one of us. I can remember Shermie down on the ground saying, "Don't hurt me." And that word, Shermie says, "Don't hurt him, fellas." Oh, yes, the Army teaches you a lot of things. And in fact, if you're interested, I will tell you, do you want to hear the story of the infamous slit trench? And what happened at 2 o'clock in the morning when a second lieutenant was on an inspection tour? And 3 guys on guard duty, including a fellow you know fairly well, decided that this second lieutenant should have a closer knowledge of slit trench manufacture. And this slit trench had been in use for over 2 months. And in fact, even at this point, there's probably a second lieutenant who knows more about the Army than Norman Mailer ever possibly could. You want to hear that story later on, gang? Or do you want to... Shh. Oh, no, you don't. Not really. Do you want to hear the story? Do you want to hear the story of the mock bombing raid on Company K? With the sacks of flour being dropped from an L-5 liaison plane at the end of a 20-mile forced march. We have all lost 45 pounds, and all of a sudden the first lieutenant hollers, "Air raid!" We've marched all the way from Chicago, and we're halfway to St. Louis now. We're in the mountains, and that little airplane goes right down the middle of the road, right at us, dropping sacks of Betty Crocker. Let me tell you, Betty Crocker is not only kitchen tested, it does a lot of other things. You want to hear that story later, gang? Oh, by the way, I forgot to make a station break a half an hour ago, so let's make it up. What station are you listening to? WOR! AM and FM. Where? Yes. New York is a summer fist fight. And yeah, I love that sign that hangs over the World's Fair that says peace through understanding. I can only warn you guys, don't take it to heart, because I have found that the more you understand somebody, the more you want to kill them. I mean, really, have you ever stopped to think what would happen if somebody really understood you and what you're really up to and what you really are capable of? Have you ever asked yourself, if I walked into this big fuchsia-colored decorator done-up office, this magnificent office, the head man, the head of personnel, and I walked in and I'm sitting there and I'm the personnel director, would I hire me? I mean, honestly, would you really go that far for the company? You ever had that feeling? Yes, of course you've had that feeling. Well, we're living right here in New York where that feeling is not only a feeling, it's a total way of life. Men walk the streets hour after hour, figuring any second now there will be a tap on the shoulder. It's all over, Fred. Come on. And you go with them, knowing, yes, people in New York carry a load of guilt bigger than the pyramid, the Great Pyramid at Giza. And that's where we are, friends. And if you're out cruising around, we're here at the Limelight, right here in the heart of Greenwich Village. Look at all these honest, reliable, sober faces here tonight. How do you like the Limelight, gang? Yay! One demonstrator says, "Shame!" Or somebody hollers over here, "How long?" And we will be here until midnight. And this place will stay open until 3 o'clock in the morning, attempting to get at that kernel of truth. I'll never forget one night standing in front of a window in Chicago, waiting for a streetcar. Have you ever waited for a streetcar or a bus all by yourself in a giant city? just standing there, and in the window is a little mechanical man with a finger pointing, lifting up placards saying, "Make the deal now."
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.
Thursday night, September 17th, Peyton Place comes to ABC television. Peyton Place looks behind the calm facade of a town that could be yours, probes deep into the lives of people you've seen, you've known, you've loved. Meet Constance McKenzie, attractive, exciting, yet alone, trapped for 17 years by a terrible secret. Her daughter Allison, on the threshold of life, about to travel the twisted paths of love and disappointment. Peyton Place, the town you'll want to visit again and again, continued twice each week, every Tuesday and Thursday night. And immediately following,
Big Bad John.
Jimmy Dean is back at a new time with a full hour of fun, music, and guests. Informality is the key to the Jimmy Dean Show, and back with Jimmy is his delightful Muppet Hound buddy, Rolf. Peyton Place and the Jimmy Dean Show, Thursday, September 17th. For a wide new world of entertainment, watch ABC.
The biggest little gal in town is the unsinkable Molly Brown, now at Radio City Music Hall plus spectacular stage show. Stay tuned for Ed Pettit reporting the news right here over WOR New York.
Good evening. Here is the late hour news. Ed Pettit reporting from the WOR newsroom. President Nasser of Egypt opened a 13-nation Arab summit conference tonight by appealing for what he called the liberation of Palestine from Zionism and the liberation of Saudi Arabia from British colonialism. A similar bid was made at an earlier conference and got mixed response. Greece and Turkey, long at loggerheads over Cyprus, are now contending with each other in bidding for UN action on the dispute. Greece has called for an urgent meeting of the Security Council. Number 8, Tarquinius won tonight's feature in the Daily Double number 4, and again number 4, Lord Valentine and Dandy Diamond. In baseball, the Phillies 9, Giants 8, Dodgers 6, Mets 2 in the ninth inning. Final, Yankees 9, Kansas City 7, Baltimore at Los Angeles is just getting underway. Turning now to the weather forecast for New York City and vicinity. Clear and cooler tonight, low in the 60s by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow mostly sunny, the high in the low 80s. Fair tomorrow night and more of the same again on Monday. The present Manhattan reading is 70 degrees, the humidity 38%, THI 66, wind from the northwest at 10 miles an hour. The barometer reads 29.91 inches and is rising. That's the late hour news for Saturday, September 5th. Ed Pettit reporting. Have a good holiday and a safe one. In just a moment, back to Gene Shepard at the Village Limelight.
This is FBI agent Donald M. Cummings. An auto theft is committed every minute somewhere in these United States. The FBI and your local police need your help. You may be a witness today. Call your local police or the FBI. Our New York number is Lehigh 5-7700.
This is WOR, AM and FM, New York.
I bet you wonder if this is a prop. Well, I'm going to tell you something about this little thing that's hooked onto me right here. It goes through this wire, see it? Goes on up through this console, is fed back to 1440 Broadway, goes out on a cheap telephone line to Carteret, and at Carteret, New Jersey, right in the heart of the pig bogs, there's a big antenna that sticks up there, and it squirts it right at Ohio. Nobody knows why. Why it's all done, what it's all about. Well, that's literally the story. And since we're embarked tonight on a program about that could be roughly called education, how it came about. Do any of you remember the first time you saw your first Sharpie? You know, kids up to about the age of 6 are just kids. And then growing out of those kids, there's already at the age of 6 the defeated. There's the kid that wins. There's the toady, you know, the kid that says, yeah. Okay, you know these two guys that are choosing sides? In fact, I'd like to look out over here tonight. We're at the Limelight. Look down at these guys. All these men here. I'm going to talk a male thing here, girls. Do you mind? You can tell the women who don't dig men, they do mind. And among every man's memories is the ineffable, inerasable memory of the great chicken-clawed chooser. You know, when you go out to the playground, all the boys, and you're standing out there, it doesn't have to be the playground, it's the street, it's the backyard. There are always two guys that choose up. You know this bit? Like that? These two guys choose up. Who chooses them? They choose themselves. They are the guys that grow up to be the bosses. Already they're Mr. Bullard. Already they're Mickey Mantle. And they're like this, you know. There's Mike and Al. Chicken claws! And somebody says, why'd you say chicken claws before we started? He said, why'd you say we shouldn't have chicken claws before we started? Chicken claws! Well, he's foot and a half bigger. So chicken claws win. And you know what chicken claws means, chick? That means that the guy that got chicken claws has first choice of all the other bits of human flotsam and jetsam that are floating around here. Now, already these guys are jockeying, you know. You know that please choose me look? I sure can go to my right, you know. Like this. Watch me. And he says, Howard. Already, you know, they know, you see. He says, give me Howard. Give me Clarence. The other guy says, Howard, Jack, Fred, Mac. And it's getting smaller and smaller. And here is that little group of guys that are getting smaller until finally there's two left. Looking over this group, I wonder how many men in this group were left alone after the great choosing went on. Yeah, women sit there looking. To finally, the last two are there. And these two guys, the choosers, look each other in the eye, and one says, look, if you'll take Clarence. And you're Clarence, you know. If you take Clarence, I'll let you have Fred, too. Take both of them. I don't want them, you know. And I'll tell you, there is nothing worse than to be a throw-in, a human tie-in sale. And so here you have men, you see, men know these things. And in civilian life, we grow up, and we learn how to hide all these things from each other. Oh, yes. All these men here tonight, everybody, when he goes out on a date, he pretends he's a chooser. He is one of the great chicken-clawed choosers. Beware of a man that yells at waiters. He's trying to pretend that he should have been chosen at the age of 9. And now as he puts that $5 and he says, give me a seat there, and he gives it to the maitre d', he's buying a choice. And the maitre d' looks at him in the eye, you know, of the man who is a chooser. Says, yeah, I'll take you, Howard. Come along, man. Come back here. Well, I am just a kid, you know, when I first learned about this, and I'll never forget it. Oh, boy. The first time I met the man who knows what this world is about. How to make everything work. How to make the little pieces fit together. You know, it's this that we're all looking for. Have you ever gone over a bookstore here on Sheridan Square and stood in line at the philosophy counter? There's Schopenhauer, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Norman Vincent Peale, Ed Sullivan. They all write books on how to live. Pat Boone writes a book on teenagers, this is the way to make it. You know? How to be nice and become a big hit record singer, you know. And this sells more than anything else. Books on philosophy sell. And have you ever watched people skulk up to a philosophy shelf? They walk up there, you know. They're looking through Kierkegaard. You ever look through Kierkegaard? It says something like the evaluation of the elliptical dream synthesis. He doesn't quite relate that with Esther Jane Albury, you know. He's trying to find out why she bugs him, you know. And he says, Kierkegaard, he heard about that. And there was that one little snot in his class that says, oh, I read Schopenhauer, you know. He gets Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer is even worse. He's translated, you know, and all these little chunky sentences that hang one another, and all these things that say whereas, and then the consideration of man's total history, the experience, the total experience. What is the total experience of the race? And so finally he begins to drift over toward the Ian Fleming counter. You'd be surprised at how many guys buy Kierkegaard but read Goldfinger. You know, there's a big difference. And if you can bring the two of them together, if you can get the intellectual to pretend that Goldfinger is philosophy, you have somehow brought Fu Manchu into the whole picture and made him respectable. Well, I'm a kid, see, and I'm just fresh, brand new in the steel mill. I am 16 years old, and I have been working as a mail boy. I knew the steel mill geographically the way most of us know our bedrooms in the dark. Oh, yeah, I knew every last inch of that crummy, steamy, wild, exciting, insanely sensual place. Are you aware that big, heavy industry conglomerations are sensual? There's an actual sexual thing about it. I suspect that this is one of the reasons why so many millions of men will work in what you think, being from the outside, you would think is an unpleasant thing. Have you ever wondered why certain men are married to unpleasant ladies? And certain ladies are married to unpleasant men? Well, it's the same thing that keeps a guy in a steel mill. It is. It's probably the same thing that keeps a guy in hell. Can you imagine yourself down there in the 7th inner circle and you're shoveling the stuff and the steam is rising, you know, like this? And then boom, the lava comes up. Oh, hold the line, will you? Give me a chance. You're down there shoveling. All of a sudden the guy says, all the guys that want to volunteer for heaven this way. You're done. You'd think about it. You wouldn't immediately say, me, I know that. Well, that's the way it is in the steel mill. And here I'm 16 years old, you know, and I've been seeing this thing from the outside all of my life, this thing on the horizon. This black, steaming hell, these great rising flames, and it's drawing me on like it did every kid in town. Like in New York here, you know, they have the same thing. New York kids are looking at this and saying, why? Well, every one of you is drawn towards showbiz. In the same way, you're drawn towards writing the novel. It's all part of showbiz. You're drawn towards Madison Avenue. It draws you. You live here. Making the scene is important in New York. It's the whole life of New York. It's the whole life of every New Yorker I ever knew. To stop being a cab driver, become important. Somehow, you know, get away from this, become big. Well, that is the industry of New York. Making it. Well, the industry of Hammond, Indiana was steel. And it drew you just the same way. It's a sexual thing. It's exciting. It's all-inclusive. It just draws you in. And so we're drifting around, all the kids. Can you imagine a high school class where everybody talks about what mill you're going to work in? When you're about to graduate, one kid's got a drag. He's got a drag in a tin mill. He's going to go in a tin mill. Another kid's the old man works in the open heart. He's going there. Another kid's going into the Ford shop. Another kid says, oh, boy, he says, man, I got a mate. I'm going to the number 2 AC. That's the electrical shop, which was very, very esoteric and highly, how can I put it, desirable. That's like saying, I'm marrying Audrey Hepburn. You know, something like that. Well, so we'd all talk about these things until finally the day came for graduation. We're out. We're all standing out in front of the mill. I wonder how many of you have ever seen a scene like this. I saw a movie here the other night. One of the very rare movies I've ever seen of the steel mill. And it showed the clock house. And I wondered how many people watching this on Channel 2 on the Late Late movie knows anything about the clock house. And it showed a group of men standing out in front of the clock house waiting for a foreman to come out to offer somebody a job. Well, that's what we did. We stood in front of the clock house just waiting for a guy to come past. And as he would go past, someone would say, "Hey, you know who that is? That's Snyder from the tin mill." That's like saying, "That's Mickey Mantle." It's like saying, there goes Gary Cooper. And everyone would say, "Gee, he's a little guy. Gee, you know, he's a little guy, isn't he? Look at, he wears a gray hat." And he walks past, it's the foreman, you know, he walks in. And then he turns around and he says, "I want 2 men. And boom, they go. And he picks 2. He says, "Come on, you 2, this way." It's like becoming anointed. Well, since this is Labor Day, I want to tell you about a story about the steel mill and the first time I ever ran into guys who know what the score is. I am assigned, maybe about a month after I'm in the mill, after I had been a mail boy and worked all through this, somebody said to me, "Go on down to the open hearth." He says, "If you got a green badge down at the open hearth, they're putting on extra men tonight." Well, have you ever seen pictures of the open hearth? Those great pouring furnaces, those great ladles. Well, of course, I'd seen them from a distance. This has been a thing that, naturally, that I grew up with and I knew about. But to be part of it, it's like a kid who's nutty about show business. And suddenly one day, David Merrick says, "You, baby, come on. You're going to do Ophelia tomorrow." It scares the living you-know-what out of you. And so the guy says, "Go down to the open hearth, you see. You can pick up an extra day." And so I go down to the open hearth. I walk up to the open hearth time office. And I say, "I've got a green badge. I'm from the tin mill." He said, "Oh, yeah, we're hiring some extra tin mill guys tonight. Come on in." He says, "You're going to go down on furnace 7. He says, "You're going down on heat 7. And I said, "Heat 7? Heat 7? Well, Harry, I'll have to explain the story. An open hearth is like a giant oven. 36 ovens all in a row. And each oven has its own team. And each team is making steel. And each team is competing against the next team. Each one is on tonnage. And there I am down on number 7, waiting to be called. Man comes up and says, "Come on, kid. Going to put you on the scales." So I'm standing back there in the darkness. And I'm watching the tin mill men trying to get organized into the steel mill world. And all the while over me, I hear the sound of these great overhead cranes ringing it out. Once in a while, somebody'd say, "Come on, do something, kid. Don't stand still." And I learned a basic trick. Don't stand still in life. And I began to move. I just walked from one place to the next. I'd stand over by the salt machine. And I'd walk over here. And I'd look at a meter. I'd walk back. I'd stand there and I'd go back again. No. The guy asked me after a half an hour, he says, you worked in the open hearth before?" I says, "Yeah, I worked down on number 12 before." He says, "How would you like to work here regularly?" He says, "We sure need experienced men." Well, friends, I have never forgotten that lesson. It's a lesson that I carry with me. It's a lesson that I carried into the Army. And you know, somebody asked me to tell the story of the food in the Army. You know, you always hear about food in the Army. And the whole idea of food in the Army, and by the way, this is part of the memory. This is part of the memory that builds up into a kind of appreciation of the basic life that we live. You always hear about bad food in the Army. Forget it. This is a myth, promulgated probably by World War I veterans. I think most guys live better in the Army than they've ever lived before or since. And they sit there and they're stuffing their trap and they're, oh, what food, wow. And they're eating steaks and chicken. Yeah, oh, yeah, it's just traditional saying, oh, what food, and they're fat and they're walking out of the mess hall. Somebody will say, you want some more of that slop? Yeah, all right, if you got some more, all right. Give me some more of that slop. Well, that's the way the Army works. You know, it really is that way. It's a tradition. And one night, I got my walking orders. I got shipped, redlined, as they say in the Army. And I am redlined to a company at Fort Monmouth over here. You know, it's funny. I wonder how many of you people ride past Fort Monmouth all the time. You see the sign, and you don't know anything about the fantastically complex life that's going on inside that fort. You just see it. You know, it says Fort Monmouth. Well, old Shep is assigned to Fort Monmouth. This is the first time in my life I'm assigned to a really big Army, solid, regular Army encampment. You know, there are places way out in the woods, you know, like Camp Crowder, these what they call training camps. But then there's the big time. It's like the Yankees. Yeah, to get assigned to Fort Monmouth, it's like being assigned to the Yankees. They got brick barracks there, you know, and that's the big time. And so I am going to Fort Monmouth, and of course I'm up through Camp Crowder. I'm all through these places where you carry a mess kit. They give you mashed potatoes, and you lick them off your watch. You know, this kind of thing, you know, and you get the ice cream in with the stew and all that. It's just life, you know. You live it that way. Well, all of a sudden, I am assigned to the 803rd OCS Signal Training Battalion, which at that time was a crack cadre outfit. You know what is a cadre? Yes, you do. Cadre, baby, is where you live, where everybody knows the score and you're under them. Everybody knows cadre in your life. You know the kids in school who make the scene? That's cadre. You know the guys who get the good accounts where you work? That's cadre. Cadre is permanent personnel. Isn't that great to be called permanent personnel? And all the rest of us know how impermanent we are. Well, I am assigned to cadre, you know, and I don't know what is this cadre bit, you know? What is this cadre thing? And I know, you know, up to this point I've been one of the guys that people talk to. And I arrive at the camp, the cadre outfit, and the man says, the first thing he says, you're going to have to get your uniforms tailored. My uniforms tailored? He says, you're in the cadre now. He says, this is the real Army. And I look around, and here are all these sharp guys sitting there. They got 7 uniforms. They've got sharp-cut suits. They're all kind of bronzed and fat. They've got cars parked out in the parking lot with gas in the tanks. Oh, yeah, you know, and I could never, this was not the Army at all. You know, it was a very happy bunch of people. They're all sitting there with that snotty look. Oh, wow. And I came in, and I walked through the barracks to my bunk, and one of the guys says, what can you do? What do you mean, what can I do? He said, well, what do you do? You must have some kind of a drag to get in this outfit. What do you do? What's your pull? What's your point? Who do you know? They want to find out who I know. Do you tell them? Nobody? I simply say, people. You know, I'm from the steel mill. I know. See, I say, people. He says, oh. You talking about Olmsted? I never heard of Olmsted. I turn, I say, well, that night, we go into supper. Well, I never saw a mess hall in my life like this. It is a mess hall that has lace curtains on the windows. It's got tablecloths. They have little silver bowls with nuts in them. They have cigarettes, you know, in these little cigarette holders. They have finger bowls with little strips of lemon floating in it, you know. I'm telling you, so help me. This sounds, you won't believe it. It's the Army. They have hot, fresh biscuits. We have our choice of chicken and wine, chicken Kiev or lobster. And I'm walking through this scene. I can't believe it's like it's like it's out of some kind of a dream. And I sit down at my little place there. It's got a little place card. It says Corporal Shepherd. Sit down there, that look like you belong. And I sit like this. Look around. Everybody else is sitting around and they're talking. It's all wonderful, I wondered if I'd been fired from the Army. Can this be the Army, And I'm sitting there walking. And it turns out every last guy in this outfit is from New York. It's the first time I ran into the real New York Sharpie. There's a lot of phrases for him, I'll tell you, It's like he's got his own little army. All the New York guys got their own little army there right in the middle of Fort Monmouth. And they ain't letting in anybody, They got the whole scene, boy, and it's going a yard wide. And I don't know any of the streets. Somebody says, they're talking all New York talk, and they're not even talking about the Army. It's all stuff like, hey, what time are you going to get the ferry? And they're like commuters, How would you like to be suddenly dropped in the middle of Darien and you live in Circleville, Ohio? You don't know what to say, what to talk about, what to do. So I just sit there quiet, trying to get the scene, trying to figure it out. We are eating like I've never in my life eaten before. Magnificent food. So after dinner, I use the finger bowls, after first almost drinking them. Down the hatch. I just figured it was a big martini, like this, I watch the sergeants over there doing this little bit, with the thing, and there are guys walking around. There are PFCs walking around with towels, And I'd say, Sergeant, is that all you'll have? Yes, fine, thanks very much. And they're walking to say, and you, sir? And I'm playing it cool by now, I said, this is the Army, man. This is where I want to stay. I go back to the barracks, and I'm lying in my pad, by the way, with little lace curtains back of me. It was the first time I had a little bureau drawer, you could pull stuff out and you could put your gas mask in a drawer. I like that idea, putting my entrenching tool, in a little shoebox, that kind of stuff. A big knife, with the knuckles on it. And I'm putting all my stuff away there, and I'm sitting there and I said, this is the first time I've ever hit something that I felt I wanted to be in. When you work in the mill, you always feel like it's temporary. The mill is much bigger than you are. In college, college, you're temporary. Somehow there was a wonderful feeling of being home. Isn't it terrible to have to write to your mother? You're always supposed to say, Ma, I can hardly wait to get back to Hammond, Indiana. This war is hell, Ma. And, you got to say, Ma, I am now in Barracks 7, and I'm never going to leave. I'll tell you, Ma, I used to think you could cook, but you're... Oh, it's terrible when you begin to find that outside world or stuff that you never heard of in the kitchen, at home. Oh, man, And so I'm sitting there in the barracks, just very afraid it's all going to disappear. And these guys are walking in, they're putting on their dress uniforms. You ought to see a real sharp, professional Army man get ready to go out. They usually have 35 shirts, all tailored. This beautiful taper, all cut, beautiful cut. They're starched. They've been starched for 10 years. These shirts just leap off the thing and just go right around and bang, They've got, those guys with those razors, sharp things, those press marks, and the press mark down here like this, Their stripes are pinched right in the middle. They got the sharp pants in their shoes. 18 pair of shoes under each bed, and a PFC to shine each one. Oh, yeah, you ought to see the scene these guys got. And, here they are. They're corporals, they're sergeants, and they're pretending all the time, you see. The minute you get out, you got to walk down the street with that hallowed look, that harried, scared look of the man who says war is hell. He can hardly wait to get back, to camp. But he's got to keep up the pretense. So I'm sitting there with these guys. My sacky old Fort Monmouth suit, hanging. So I begin to figure out. Let's see. Tomorrow morning, immediately after reveille, I will not stay for breakfast. I'll go down to the tailor shop. I wonder if I can get a used car around here. Let's see, Staten Island, Queens. I've never been to New York in my life. Remember that. And these guys have been talking about Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island. Are you aware of how legendary these names are in the Middle West? Do you know what Brooklyn means to somebody in Indianapolis? Seriously. Do you know that when you first see the Bronx and you come from Cleveland, you can't believe it? I mean, it's like you want to take pictures of street signs. Bronx, Grand Concourse. Where's the sign that says Bronx? I want to show them I've been there. Brooklyn, I want to show them. It's legendary. It's like Oz. And these guys are talking. I'm saying Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Times Square, New York. I've got to get to be part of the scene. I have to learn the language. I've got to learn the language. How many of you have ever gone to an Ivy League school and you're from Minnesota? You got to learn the language. You got to learn just that little trick they have of wearing a tie, and all that little stuff. The little way of the way to wear a pair of chinos. There's a way, There's a way you wear them, and there's a way you don't. The tribal language, in other words. And I'm saying to myself, I've got to learn this. And so I dragged my shoes out, and from 7 o'clock in the evening till 10 that night, I shined. You never saw a pair of clodhoppers gleam. I'll tell you, most guys who've never been in the Army don't know that wonderful feeling of shining shoes. That great feeling of accomplishment. Look at those big, you hold it, you lay it down. You stand back and, gee, you look your face in them. And so I'm shining my shoes. And all the while, these casual cats, these hip guys are coming in and out. I can hear the cars going. And I don't hear once in the barracks that one single word that my Army used to denote everything. You see, and I had made the first boo-boo. The first boo-boo. I'm in this barracks 5 minutes, and I hollered to someone, "Where's the butt can?" They turned and looked at me. And someone says, "Do you wish to get rid of your ashes?" By the way, that has a double meaning. And so I says, yes, excuse me, fellas. That thing in my shirt is billowing out. I've got the shirt that's up there like this, and I'm sweaty. So that whole night, I'm working, trying to figure it out, how to get my shirts right, my shoes right, my language right. The next morning is breakfast. Let me describe breakfast to you at the cadre. You can't believe it. You just can't believe it. All of you have lived in breakfasts. I know, looking down here, have you ever thought of all the meals you've eaten all lined up? I mean, can you imagine, honestly, an endless automat counter? And there you are, the one you just had, you see. And you look at that like the one you just had tonight at 6 and 7 o'clock. There's your hamburger or whatever it is, you look at it, and you go this way. The further on down you get, the harder it gets to remember. When did I have that? What is this? Then you say, wow, look at that. Look at that meal. And then then of course you get further on down until finally you reach pablum. Oatmeal, little bottles, and then nothing. You can see your whole history. Well, all of us have lived through breakfast. I know all of you have. You have millions of different types. Well, here is breakfast time in the Army. Barracks 7, the 803rd. Now, usually in the Army, everybody runs like mad. There is an opening. They have a little assembly. They call it what do they call it? We'll have a formation. And you stand there, and everybody runs to the latrine. Some guys go down to eat. Most guys don't. And down there in the mess hall, they have some old French toast. The Army is the only place where they can burn one end of French toast and the other's raw. It is, that's true. French toast, big fat pieces of bacon, a lot of syrup. That's the Army breakfast. And you get yourself a little box of Wheaties. You know they eat Wheaties in the Army? It's kind of nice to know, isn't it? The Big G cereal is right there when you're going off to get those guys in the pillboxes. So that's the Army breakfast, and you're very casual. You know the scene. You know it. You know what you're going to expect. And you don't think anything about it. Well, I go into the latrine, and I notice nobody's in there. I'm the only guy. I drift in. There's nobody there. So plenty of hot water. Gee, it's great. They have great latrines and everything. Hot water. So I begin to feel alone, and I say, well, where is everybody? And I hear them going past. They're going to the mess hall. Every last guy. So, I want to know the language, so I fall out. And as I get closer to the mess hall, I begin to smell this smell. In all the years I've been out of the Army, I have never yet smelled a smell like that. If you can imagine food that you have never tasted, smells you have never smelled, experiences you have never experienced, this is the way this smelled. At 7:30 on a bright, shiny morning in the middle of an Army camp, fantastic smells, the smells of baking. But I mean baking. A kind of sharp, sweet, luring smell. And so I fall in, Gee, what is the scene? Well, I get into the mess hall, and there they are. They've got tables laid out as you come in with big, flat, stainless steel trays of freshly baked, get this, New York Waldorf Astoria breakfast pastry. Incredible. They had prune Danish. They had pineapple Danish. They had cheese Danish. They had Danish. They had everything, and I've never seen anything in my life like this, and it's all along there, and they have big pitchers of cream. They have kippers. I come from Hammond, we never have kippers, Who eats fish in the morning, And they had kippers. They had stuff. They had about 35 different things for breakfast. And here are these guys, the sergeants are walking past, and they're pointing like this, and the orderly's saying, yes, fine. What do you have? He says, this. Okay. And they'd walk back and sit down, and they'd bring it to them on a tray. So I say, trying to pretend I'm in the bit, I know. I don't know. Those are no good. They're never any good here. How about the cheese? Give me a little cheese, some of this and this. Okay. I sit down and watch. I had the greatest breakfast I have ever had before or since. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. It was like those pictures you see, when they're trying to sell you a cruise aboard ship, only it never is that way, You ever been on one? It really was. And I couldn't figure it out. It didn't fit. Didn't fit any of the things that I knew of the Army, you see. So I'm sitting there, and I'm beginning to feel this funny feeling of conscience that I'm cheating. That somehow they're cheating. When are they going to find out, fellas? I mean, the civilian world is going to come in here and raid us. They're going to come, outside, they had this thing called the point system. Everybody was saving butter. Nobody had bacon, little red points and that. Here these guys are stuffing it in, They're just laying it in there. And I am really digging the scene, By now I can't believe it. It's incredible. I walk out of this breakfast, and I'm feeling this. I felt like James Farley looks, that wonderful, that bald, big, fat, hefty Cadillac driver, Robert Moses feeling, that kind of, you're on top of the world, you're somehow this was the place where a corporal counted, I have my two stripes, I sort of walk out, and by now, already I'm beginning to fill out a little bit, around the edges. My suits are beginning to fit. I get back in the barracks, and these guys are splitting. One guy is saying to the other guy, he says, how about Jones Beach? Jones Beach? It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the Army. You know, I thought maybe this is a new name for the grease trap. You know, I just didn't know this name. The guy says, how about Jones Beach? Who wants to go to the beach with me today? Come on, fellas. Come on. Oh, come on, Harvey. And a couple of guys say, oh, come on, gee. All right. They take the towels. Out they go. I can't believe it. I'm sitting there, you know, I'm waiting for them to call me to tell me what I've got to do. You see, nobody is ever assigned in the Army without a task. And I'm waiting. So I get up, walk around a little bit. Another guy gets up and he walks around. He's putting his shoes on. He says, I'm going out of the service club. If anybody calls, I'm at the service club, fellas. Yeah. He goes out. He's going to get something to eat, you know, the service club. So I figure, well, maybe I better go to the service club. So I'm drifting out. Get down to the club. 10 of us are sitting. This is an Army story like you never heard. 10 of us are sitting in the club, and I'm drinking beer at 9 in the morning. I'll tell you talk about decadence. And what worried me, it was German beer. You know? These guys, that was the war against them, you know. And we're sitting there, we're drinking Heinekens, you know, and laying and I said, gee, these guys really got a pipeline, you know. And I immediately begin to see some German cavalry guy outside of Stuttgart drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon. You know? Oh, yeah, the enlisted men the world over got a secret companionship, you know. So I'm sitting there, you know, and I can't figure this out. And one thing you learn in the Army, keep moving. I mean, don't ever sit... What's the matter? Is our PA going out on us? That's an exciting sound. The mob is finally coming. Well, anyway, I'm sitting there, you know, and in the Army, you better turn that speaker off. Yeah, cut it. Can't cut it. What is it? Hello, test. It's out there. What do you got? The radio on, fellas? They're trying to listen to WABC. Oh, it's me. It's the microphone? No, it is not the microphone. Strange sounds. Huh? Can you hear it out? Can you hear it out there? What do you think it is? Could it be the beginning of it all again, fellas? Well, let me tell you what happened. I'm trying to learn the score, see? I'm trying to also stay with all my might in this company. It's the first time in my life I have hit what everybody in the Army is looking for, the birth. You know, each one of you guys is looking for something in life that goes beyond anything that you know now. You may be looking for a chick that goes beyond all chicks, you know, that unimaginable chick. Women are looking for that unimaginable man who is infinitely sensitive, who is aware of their every mood, who loves them beyond all love. Well, I had discovered it. Honest to John, it was just a magnificent feeling, and I suddenly says, I want to stay here. I want to stay here, and I got that panicky feeling, you know, I want to stay here. And I began to be very big, very Madison Avenue. Go back to the barracks, take my uniforms, take them down and get them tailored. I want them cut in. I want the things put in. You know that you can get creases sewn into your shirts? I'm getting creases sewn in. I'm getting my stripes pressed. Well, about 3 o'clock that afternoon, I am sitting in the barracks waiting for supper when a guy arrives who had a baggy pair of pants. He had a baggy shirt. He was wearing a pair of sweaty sergeant stripes. He walked in the barracks, and I knew. You know that sick feeling? That sick feeling that at last they have come for me. It must be the same feeling that guys feel when death arrives. Or when that pink slip arrives at the office. This guy comes in and he says, hey, he says, where's the duty, Corporal? I'm looking at this. You got the roster of this barracks? I says, I don't know who's anybody around here. I don't know anybody here. And he looked at me for about 10 seconds. Is your name Shepard? I says, yes. Come on. Come on, let's go. Get your stuff, will you? Pack your stuff, let's go. The truck is outside. The truck is outside. And my beautiful shirts, you know, the tailored shirts, put them in my bag, and they're crunching as I put them in, you know, crunch down in a barracks sack. I take my entrenching tools out. I take my trench knife out. Put it in. Over the shoulder. Out I go. And I could see guys beginning to drift in from Jones Beach. The other guys, you know. Their towels around their necks. Bronzed, thin, beautiful-looking people. And I'm getting in the back of this GI Carrier. And the guy sitting back there with me, the sergeant, says, how did you pull it? I said, how did I pull what? He says, how did you work it? He says, how did you get in that barracks? And I says, what do you mean, how did I get in? Suddenly I realized he wanted in. And I says, well, he says, do you know somebody? I said, And 10 minutes later, I'm back in the casual company in the Army. 5 minutes after that, I am up to my knees in the grease trap. And 6 guys are hollering at me, come on, and after that, you're going to clean the chickens. And I knew that I was back in life. Oh, wait, this is WOR, AM and FM, New York. Now, ever since that time, I have wondered about that company. Is it still there? Are those guys tonight in the barracks over there in Fort Monmouth listening to me on the air? Is somebody looking for a flamethrower to get after me because I'm telling the outside world about it? I don't know. Are they there? Did I even experience this? 2 days after I had left that company, I'm sitting in a casual outfit. Do you know what a casual outfit is? Well, I want to tell you. Dante must have been in a casual company when he wrote some of his best stuff. Do you know what a casual company is? Even the name is scary, you know, when you think about it. It's all the guys who have drifted down to the bottom of the drain in the Army, and they got no place for them. No place for them, no place for them to go, nothing for them to do, and there they sit, just waiting for the call to go to God knows where, for God knows what, to do God knows. And they just sit. And once in a while somebody says, give me 7 men, you 7 from the end, let's go. And you get up and you go. You don't know who you're with. Well, 3 days later, after about 6 years in this casual company, I'm sitting around, and just like this, I'm sitting in a mess hall, and we're eating our rubber liver. They give us liver, you know, it's rubber liver. And we're all sitting there, and there's no talk in a casual company. Once in a while, that famous word is heard, that's all. You'll hear somebody, Bishop! And somebody says, oh, Bishop, yeah, you! And then somebody, who said that? Bishop! That's the way life is in a casual company. And somebody says, sit down, you Bishop! Ah, Bishop! And then he sits. This is the way to... And you know, have you ever been in a company where they actually steal your Wheaties? I'll never forget, I turned my back like that. Whoop, somebody grabs my Wheaties. And I says, who's got the Wheaties? That ain't exactly what I said, but who's got the Wheaties? Well, we're sitting there in a casual company, and it suddenly dawned on me, you know, it came back. I'm an inveterate storyteller. And I just had to say it. I said, and they look up, you know, at that sullen look of guys who are lost men, drifting in the Sargasso Sea of life. They look up. What do you want? I said, let me tell you about the 803rd. And somebody says, the 803rd. Were you there? I said, yeah. He says, tell him. There was another lost man who had been through there for 5 minutes. He didn't believe it, you know. He says, were you there? And I said, yeah. He says, was it? I said, yeah. You know, he had doubted his sanity now for a month. And I sat down, I said, fellas, there is a company somewhere. I says, you see this glass? You know what this is filled with? And 18 guys said, yeah, blah, blah. I said, in the 803rd champagne. French champagne. And I grab a chunk of bread, that army bread, you know, with the heel marks on it. And I say, you see this? What is this? And that same word, ja, 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 ja. I say, in the 803rd French pastry. The crust melts when you look at it. And I grab my chunk of liver. What is this? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, you are right. Fling it down. Friends, in the 803rd, these men eat. Well, have any of you had chicken Kiev? You know, one or two little flickers of remembrance of an ancient life. One guy says, yeah, I heard of it. And all the rest of the guys, you know, they say, yeah, chicken in the basket, you mean? I says, no, chicken Kiev. Chicken Kiev is filled with the finest of succulent, ancient Middle Eastern herbs. It's cooked only in the high light of the moon under certain conditions that are only found in ancient calendars and can only be truly appreciated by men whose palate has been crossed with the finest of light Alsatian wines. Company 803. And I sit down. And I begin to eat. And somebody way down at the end of the line says, you're a pep liar! I says, who said that, you blah, blah? I was back in the Army again. And I knew then something that I've always carried with me. Do you know the concept of paradise that we all have? Someplace it really is. Nobody believes us. Even to this day, Army men, when I tell them the story of this company, they say, oh, come on, you're exaggerating. Then they try to tell you some story, you know, about some piddling little company they were in California. I say, no, these guys had silverware. I mean silverware with you know, the little hallmarks on the back. And when you ate it, when you touched the glasses, they rang for 10 minutes. You know, doing. They did not have KPs. They had kitchen help. Those guys walked out of the mess hall talking about the servant problem. I'm telling you the truth. I mean, they used to say KPs are not like they used to be. And once in a while you'd hear the mess sergeant back there saying, will you please go easy on the crystal? You know, it was that kind of thing. Army men look at you and they say, no. No such company ever existed. Well, I am here to raise my hands that somewhere there is a dream company. Somewhere there is a place for each one of us where it really works. It reminds me of the Flying Dutchman. Are any of you familiar? What is this? The Flying Dutchman here? Are any of you familiar with the Flying Dutchman myth? All right, I'm going to tell you what it is. There was an ancient Dutch mariner who was cursed because of various evil things that he had done. And he was cursed forever to pursue over the bounding, mainless, ancient seas forever and ever the love of a perfect good woman. He was cursed to do this. And they say that some nights when you stand up on the bluffs overlooking Frenchman's Bay in Bar Harbor, on foggy, windy nights, you can see drifting through that sea the Flying Dutchman searching. Well, you know why there is such a myth? Because we always believe that somewhere there's some place that really makes it. There are some people who really do it. You know, like those people in the Valentine ads. Isn't that a fantastic life they live in the Rheingold ads? Somewhere there are people who live like that. Oh, yeah. Somewhere there's a heaven. Every last theology has the concept of a heaven. And we all put it down. We say, oh, come on, come on. And yet secretly something says, yeah, but what if? What if? What if you're putting it down? And you're saying, I don't want to go to heaven. And somewhere up there, there's that thing, whatever it is.